Welcome back to The Whole Home. I am Kezia, and today I'm going to do something I have not done before and read through the comments on my most watched content of this year. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It hit 1.1 million views, and with that always comes a lot of comments and different points of view. So we're going to watch the video and then read through the comments. If you're new here, I'm Kezia, and my goal on the internet is to make lower footprint, sustainable living feel less complicated and more budget friendly. This is potentially not the way to make it feel less complicated, but for me, it was my next step on this sustainability journey. And in general, changing the way we think about clothing and consume clothing is a massive move that we can make towards sustainability. The video is a progress video of making these dresses, which if you follow me, you have seen them. We gave up buying new clothes at the beginning of 2023. We set ourselves a challenge for a year as a family. This was 18 months later, but we had kept going, and I wanted to use fabric that was already in circulation for our family to wear for my brother's wedding rather than buying new outfits, but I wanted something sentimental. Anyway, this was the video where I was explaining that we had about 2 weeks to go until the wedding, and I had procrastinated and I had not started making any dresses yet. And this was my most watched content of 2024. So I love that it was, because it's a message that really matters to me. Also, no one who watched it actually even saw the finished result, but let's watch the video and then we'll talk through some of the comments. And if you do want to see the proper full vlog of the process, I will link that one below. But here is the 60-second short video that was my most watched content of the year.
My brother is getting married in 12 days and I am wearing a dress from a charity shop, but I decided to make dresses for my two girls. I've never sewed more than a straight line or a square, but I did in my teens kind of learn how to use a sewing machine. So that's what we're working with. Also, I got a pattern from Peony Designs. It looks kind of like this. It's what we're going to go with. Why am I doing this? Well, at the beginning of last year, we decided to stop buying new clothes. The British Fashion Council has said we have enough clothing in circulation on the planet to last 6 generations, which is kind of insane. So I think we've got to change our mindset to use some of that stuff instead of buying new. So that's what I did. Got a pillowcase and duvet set, and I'm going to use it on my limited sewing ability to make 2 dresses in 12 days. I don't think sewing has to be a trad wife kind of skill. I think it's an essential skill for sustainability to take what's in circulation and use it to make what we actually want to wear and use. So it's what we're going to try and do. I'm going to try and learn to sew and get 2 dresses done in 12 days. You can follow along and see if I manage to do it.
Okay. So let's dive right in with Jackie, who said, do you really call sewing a trad wife skill? Ugh, no, man, no. Just hell no, it's an art. Sewing and creating a garment is an art skill. Okay, so I referenced in that video, I don't think sewing has to be a trad wife skill. And this is why I made these dresses. I had never sewn more than a straight line, as I said. And I feel like we can see sewing as a trad wife skill. So a skill just for women who are taking a more traditional gender role. And my point here was actually, I think sewing should not be a trad wife skill. It is not a trad wife skill. Sewing is actually a skill for sustainability. If we are going to be sustainable and use what's in circulation and not destroy the planet with clothing, which is one of the most detrimental industries for the planet. If we're not going to do that, we have to actually reclaim sewing from being seen as a trad wife skill for some people who want to stay home and do that, to actually, we all need at least some basic level of sewing ability. So Jackie, I agree with you. Hell no, sewing is not a trad wife skill. It is a skill for all of us. It is an art, not just an art, but actually a needed tool if we're going to live sustainably on this planet. So all 3 of my kids are learning to sew. The next comment was, why didn't you get their dresses from the charity shop as well to save your mental health? Okay, we'll touch on the mental health aspect of this because the other half of the question comes up later. This is a great point. Sometimes we can think that just taking things off our plates is going to make our mental health better. Like doing less must equate to less stress. And actually for me, I get a lot of joy from being creative, from working with my hands. It helps to relax me. I also love a challenge that's a creative challenge. There is actually more and more science backing the idea that working with our hands and creating things really is good for our mental health. So this is one where we just have to know ourselves individually. For me, this was not a stretch for my mental health. I can see that saying that I have to make 2 dresses 10 days before a wedding could seem like I'm pushing my mental health, but actually for me, it was really good. I loved it and it made me happy. And I knew it would because I know myself, so I knew I wasn't pushing myself too much. Thanks for thinking about my mental health, and it is definitely something we should think about when we're going after these sustainable endeavors, that we don't burn out in the process. And it's a tough balance because I don't think we should ever say that someone else has to suffer or be treated or paid wrongly, or the environment has to be abused for the sake of our mental health. But we really need to find those midway things where we can maybe consume less, consume differently, do things differently, so that we can have both our mental health and also sustainability. Okay, next comment, and I like this one. If the British Fashion Council says that we have enough clothes for 6 generations, why make more clothes? Why not buy dresses for your daughters instead of adding more clothing to the already too much? Changing your mindset, but then making more seems like a confused mindset. Okay, I love this question. And I will say now, this stat that is thrown around about the British Fashion Council, which I have said it, I do say it, I can only ever find it as a quote of the British Fashion Council, or the British Fashion Council quoting it themselves, but I can never actually see where it came from. So whether or not it is strictly true and rooted in a study somewhere, it is definitely true that we have enough clothing for many, many generations. My take here is that we have to figure out a route forward for sustainability and balancing it with real life so that we have a workable way forward. So in terms of this wedding, we had been doing 18 months with only buying from charity shops, predominantly a little bit of vintage and just using what we have. It's the last family wedding that we have of either of our siblings. And I thought it was probably the last wedding where my 2 daughters, who are 3 years apart, would wear matching dresses. So I really wanted something matching. I did initially search for matching dresses for their ages, and I couldn't find anything matching secondhand for their 2 ages. Now, I could and would have changed my mindset to say, actually, we don't need matching to be sentimental, because we don't. And this is where we have to work on changing our mindset and changing the way we consume, both together. But then I had this idea, maybe I can take some fabric that's already in circulation and use the fabric that's already been made, already existing, and is unwanted to make dresses. And yes, we have more clothes than are needed in circulation, but really that is largely about the fabric that's been created. And one of the most detrimental kinds of fabric is plastic fabric, which is not, polyester, which is not what I went and bought. So because of that, I had initially started looking at organic, GOTS certified cotton to make their dresses with. And then I went, actually, A, that's expensive. It wasn't really the money I wanted to spend. But B, I want to use something that's already in circulation to do this. And so I found a secondhand duvet cover, which those are not in high demand. There are so many being resold so I bought a secondhand duvet cover, and that is what I used to make the dresses. So no, I wasn't using clothing that was already in circulation, but I was using fabric that was already in circulation and turning something unwanted that potentially would have sat or eventually been dumped or maybe been bought, but something unwanted, and turning it into something that was worn for a special occasion, will be handed down, will be loved, and will kind of become an heirloom piece. So had I resorted to buying something new or using new fabric, then I would have changed my mindset and gone, I don't need matching and new to be sentimental. But because I was able to take something already in circulation, fabric-wise, even though it wasn't already a piece of clothing, and turn it into a piece of clothing that will be used, for me, that does the same thing. But I would not have taken that want for sentimentality to the point of buying a new item, if that makes sense. I think if we're going to use what is already in circulation, a lot of the skill that we need to find is altering things and changing things so that what we already have in circulation, be it furniture, clothes, jewelry, so many different things. Taking what's already in circulation and turning it into pieces that we will actually use is a huge part of the mindset of using what we already have. So it's not just about keeping clothing, but about taking whatever is already in circulation and using it in some way. So I've also taken clothes and turned them into art pieces, but we're taking what's in circulation and finding a way to make it usable. Okay, next comment was Karen, who said, "Is that a hole in your sweater?" And Christina then said, "I saw that too. The next step is to learn how to mend and make do." Or is it make do and mend? Make do and mend, I think, was a wartime slogan when that mentality of using what was in circulation and not demanding new was a very normal and widely shared belief and need. Clothing was actually rationed during the war, and there were ideas put out in terms of what clothing should look like to use the least amount of fabric. And maybe we need something like that again to actually have government legislation on how we use clothing. I don't know. There are some countries doing it. There's a video about how France is getting involved in what clothing is allowed to be sold and how. I'll pop that below. But it is not a hole in my sweater. This is actually a hand-me-down sweater that was handed down to me when it was no longer needed. I have had it for 5 years. I wore it when I was pregnant and I have kept wearing it. It probably needs dyeing because it is a bit discolored, but I absolutely love it. It's so comfy and it has lines of big holes. So thanks, Karen, for being concerned that I am not making do and mending. I absolutely do hold that belief and I do make do and mend, as well as making new clothes from old duvets. Okay, next comment, Cindy said, "The waist and sleeves are hard." Okay, lots of people said this kind of thing about the pattern that I had chosen, that it wasn't an easy pattern, that it was a big one to dive into, having never sewn something before. I didn't know this. I just found a pattern that I liked. I showed it to a few people who sew and they said, "I think you can do that." One of them said, "Well done going for a bow closure," so that it was forgiving across the back. But what does it say? The waist and sleeves are hard. The waistband is actually the first piece that I did, and I felt so accomplished when I had created just this waistband and it stretched. I was like, I showed everyone that was in the house, "Look, I made a waistband." Because I just followed the steps. There was no creativity in it for me in terms of thinking up what I was doing. I just followed the pattern to a T and it really was a good pattern. So yes, the waistband was hard. The sleeves were actually one of the hardest parts for me. This ruching, where it gathers, that was the hardest bit for me and took the most patience. And again, there is a huge amount on the skirt part. So that was the hardest part. This was not an easy pattern. Don't recommend starting here, but the pattern was brilliant. And so I really did just follow it step by step. And then like magic, it actually turned into a dress. Okay, next comment was Rosie, who said, "I don't know why, but this is triggering awful childhood memories of umbrella skirts. Yes, my mother recycled umbrellas into skirts. At least our knickers stayed dry when it rained." I loved this. I loved that Rosie's mom recycled umbrellas. That is another level. But I think it raises an important point about listening to our kids and embracing their opinions and bringing them into the journey, because I don't want their idea of sustainability to be they weren't allowed something new or they had to wear these dresses that I made for them. So I involved them in the process. We looked at patterns. I said, "What do you think about this pattern? Do you like this? Would you want to wear this?" And then we looked at fabric together, used duvet covers and things like that, and said, "What do we think about this color?" And then as we went through the process, I brought them in. Do we still like it? What do we think? How do we feel about this? And so they were very involved in the process. So they felt powerful in the process and excited about the creativity of it, rather than being told, "Here's what you're wearing and it's not new and I made it and you will be wearing it." So that was really important to me. Rosie, I hope you're okay and those memories don't come back to haunt you too much. Okay, what else have we got? Amy said, "Would you mind sharing the link or more information on the pattern, please? I love making clothes for my kids and the dresses you made are stunning." Thank you. So many people said this. It was a really great pattern. Thank you for loving the dresses. I love them so much. It was by Peony Designs. I got it on Etsy and I really didn't search that much. The inside is really messy, by the way. I did not make it pretty on the inside, but it was good on the outside. But it is a peony designed dress, and it is the willow dress. There are a few different ways you could do it too. You could just have a skirt with no pleating or ruching, but I like this, so we went with this. But it was very good, very easy to follow. I could print out the pattern at home. It printed out on A4 paper, and then you pieced all the A4 pieces together like a puzzle and then cut them out. So it was really practical, really easy to do at home. A few of the terms, I had to guess at the terms where it said things like the direction of the fabric or cut on the fold, and I didn't know what those meant, but I'm sure I could have emailed them. They were really helpful. I actually had the pattern sent to the wrong email. They sorted me out. They were super helpful. So that was the pattern. Okay, so then on the next reel, which maybe we should watch. Should we go watch the next reel? Okay, and then I will talk about some of the comments on this that made me laugh. The comments on this video were a lot of compliments, which I will not read. Thank you, everyone, for being so complimentary. I felt very accomplished, I will not lie. That I managed to do this, it made me incredibly happy. But the comments that made me laugh on this were, Linda said, that doesn't look like the same fabric. The duvet was stripes. To which Jean responds and says, I think it was plain on the reverse, which it actually wasn't. I will explain. Then the response is a screenshot showing that it is actually stripy on both sides, proving that I did not make these dresses. Another comment said, if you bought the dresses, just say. I love this commitment to truth on the internet. What they're talking about is when I throw the fabric at the screen to do the change to show the reveal of the dresses, the fabric I threw at the kids was pink and white stripy, and the dress is made from a ruffled plain pink fabric. You can see that at the back here, on the inside, some of the lining is the stripy fabric. It was a duvet and pillowcases. The duvet, 2 pieces of the duvet, so like the top of the duvet cover and the underneath of the duvet cover were different fabric. Well, by the time I came to make that reel, I had used all of this fabric, and the only side of the duvet cover that was left was the pink stripy one. So it is not the same fabric that I throw at the kids and that their dresses are made from, but it is the same duvet cover. And here's the little stripy part on the inside to prove it. But thanks, Jean and Linda, for your commitment to me not lying on the internet. Okay, back to the original reel, and this is a great point. So Laura commented and said, that duvet set is recent from Primark though. This is true. So this is true. This was once a duvet cover from Primark that someone bought, used, no longer wanted, and popped on Vinted. Now, I do typically have a rule that when I'm shopping on secondhand selling sites like Vinted, I won't buy fast fashion. So I do not buy Primark usually from Vinted, because with these sites increasing so much in their popularity, I feel like sometimes if we're buying secondhand for sustainability, but then buying from people who are selling a high turnover of fast fashion, really, we're just fueling the buying of more fast fashion. So I go for sustainable, ethical brands, but still secondhand. On this, I think a few things. I think I was very focused on buying a duvet cover and getting fabric for the dresses, and I actually didn't think about where it was from. If I was doing it again, maybe I would do it from somewhere more sustainable, even though it was secondhand. So it was secondhand. It had been bought, it was unwanted, it was already in circulation. And that is a huge piece of what we can do to be more sustainable, is to use what's already in circulation. But it was from a brand I would not normally shop, even secondhand. Next time, I would probably do better on that. It is entirely cotton, which is another thing for me. I try not to buy plastic-based fibers because the washing of them is also not hugely sustainable. So it is entirely cotton. But yes, Once upon a time, it was from Primark. I never would have bought it new from Primark, so that would never be how I source fabric. But when things are secondhand, it is a little different, although I usually try not to do that even from vintage. So Laura, you have a good point. Maybe I would do it differently next time, but it is a little different because it is secondhand, to me at least. So there is that. There were a lot more comments. There are hundreds I could dive into, but those were some of the ones that I picked out that made me laugh, or I felt like had good points, or I wanted to talk about. If you want to see the actual videos, I will link those below. My most watched YouTube long video of the year was a charity shop haul, which again, I love that was my most watched content. I will link that one here, and if you want to watch the vlog of the full dressmaking process from beginning to end, how it went, you can see that video here. And if you have watched any of my content through the year, or you watched any of those dress videos, thanks for being here and on this journey of treading with a lighter footprint and doing it in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. You can hit subscribe for more of that content throughout the year, and I will see you in another video sometime soon.